You know all that stuff you've been taught, that patience and explaining your feelings are the keys to earning respect? Well, what if all of it has been dangerously misleading? Today, we're throwing that entire playbook out the window. We're going to dive into a completely different way of thinking about boundaries, one that's a lot less about communication and a whole lot more about pure, undeniable consequence. Just think about that for a second. That colleague who keeps dumping work on your desk right before a deadline, or that friend who's always late. And that little smile they give you, it isn't an apology. No, according to this thinking, it's a sign of victory. It means they've just run a little test on you, and they've learned exactly what they wanted to, that your rules can be bent, they can be broken, and ultimately, they can be ignored. So let's just ask the question directly right now, for you. When you draw a line in the sand, does it actually hold? Or does it just get washed away with the very first little bit of pushback? This is the central question we're getting into today because, honestly, the answer determines everything. It determines whether you are truly respected or if you're just managed.
Okay, so to get to the solution, we have to correctly identify the problem first. And it turns out these little boundary violations, they aren't what they seem. They're not just accidents or simple misunderstandings. No, this framework says they are something much more calculated. They are a hidden test. And this idea of military-grade reconnaissance, it just reframes everything, doesn't it? That friend who shows up 40 minutes late isn't just a bit disorganized. They're running an experiment on you. They are literally sending out scouts to probe your defenses, to measure your response, and to gather data on one simple question: can you be controlled? And yeah, every single time you just let it slide, you fail the test.
So what's our natural response when this happens? Well, most of us, we try to be fair, right? We meet a small offense with a small correction. It feels mature, it feels reasonable, but it turns out that's a fatal error. It's what our source here calls the proportional response trap. And this chart just brilliantly illustrates the trap. See, on the left, that's what you think you're doing, but look at the right. You think you're enforcing a boundary, but what you're actually doing is opening a negotiation over your own dignity. You think you're demanding respect, but you're really just telling them the price. They learn that, hey, stealing your credit at work only costs them one serious conversation. And you know what? They decide that's a price they are more than willing to pay. And that leads to this incredibly crucial point. When you use proportional responses, your boundaries stop being these impenetrable walls. Instead, they become simple little toll booths. The other person learns they can cross your lines whenever they feel like it, as long as they're willing to pay that small, predictable fee. You know, your temporary anger or maybe a quick, meaningless apology. All right, so if the old way is a trap, we obviously need a whole new mindset. And this is where we pivot. We're moving to an approach that understands that power dynamics are at play in every single interaction, and that very often, words are the weakest weapon you have in your arsenal. This line just says it all, doesn't it? You cannot reason with someone who's treating you like a math problem. Explaining your feelings to them is a complete waste of breath. They already understand they're disrespecting you. They just believe deep down that they can get away with it. And right here, this is the core principle of this entire approach. Real power doesn't come from your protests or your lectures or your long explanations. No, it comes from action. And more specifically, it comes from withdrawing the one and only thing they actually value from you, your utility. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, the method has two parts, and they're designed for decisive, permanent results. It's all about something called calculated withdrawal and something else called salutary terror. Let's break those down. Okay, so first up, calculated withdrawal. Let's say a colleague exploits your competence. You simply make that competence completely unavailable to them anymore. A friend wastes your time, you stop making time for them. But, and this is absolutely crucial, look at step 3. You do it silently. No big announcement, no explanation. Because the moment you announce it, you've just turned a consequence back into a negotiation, and you are right back where you started. Now, the second tactic is even more potent. And I know the term salutary terror sounds intense, but it's important to see this isn't about being cruel. It's about being strategic. It's about creating a healthy fear of consequences. The whole idea is one overwhelming, maybe even disproportionate response that is so shocking and so final that it prevents all future tests, not just from that one person, but from everyone who sees it happen. Just think about the efficiency of that for a moment. You can spend your entire life fighting 1,000 little battles, re-explaining your boundaries over and over again to every new person. Or you can act once with such undeniable finality that your reputation does all the work for you forever.
One single action creates a permanent force field of respect. So, ultimately, this brings you to a crossroads, a clear choice. You can continue down the old path, or you can choose a new one. Let's really look at what those two realities actually mean for you. The old you is just stuck in this endless, exhausting loop, constantly explaining, constantly justifying, negotiating your own worth day after day. You're completely worn out from arguing your case. But here's the brutal secret. There is no judge. There is nobody listening. There's only you and the person testing to see if they can wear you down through sheer persistence. But the new you operates on a completely different level. Your standards aren't suggestions anymore. They are the law. You don't negotiate, you enforce. And the result, surprisingly, isn't more conflict, it's peace. It's a kind of peace that comes from unassailable authority and from the quiet knowledge that only the people who truly respect you are allowed in your life. So, in the end, the choice is yours. Will you continue to be someone whose boundaries can be managed, manipulated, and negotiated away? Or will you decide to become someone whose standards are so clear and whose consequences are so decisive that you are, quite simply, unconquerable? The method is now yours.